to assume, it causes one to assume that the solution is either not possible right now, and then it causes people to do what, to say words like what Peter Tosh once said in the early 80s, just before he passed away. He said, all the issues of liberation, of Black liberation, that our elders and ourselves have been fighting for will only be resolved by the next generation. The challenges that we face now, Peter Tosh was basically saying, even though he was speaking in English or Pidgin, we have all we have dedicated our lives to tackling certain issues that are facing the Black family and the Black people or the Black nation globally. Yet, in my assessment, this is him saying, I'm paraphrasing, all these challenges will only be dealt with and solved. He used the word solved. The solution is amongst our children. Now, Peter Tosh is a child now who's almost 50, if he's not 50 already or over. Marcus Garvey has a child who is in his 70s, if I'm not mistaken. Baba Marcus Garvey, no Mama Garvey. He's in his 60s, 70s, going further, right? A lot of our revolutionaries, their children are either working in academia, others have the revolutionary movements that they either lead or mislead, because that can happen too. The point I'm raising is, okay, let me start again. Do we think that these challenges have not been identified in the past 50 years? Please take 5 responses there, my brother, and then I will really get to my point exactly. The question now is, have all these challenges not been identified and solutions presented by our revolutionary scholars, our revolutionary intellectuals, our revolutionary philosophers, and our revolutionary leaders in the past 50 years? Yes or no?
Sister Tone in the chat says that they have been identified in the past 50 years. And then Sister Rose also says they have been identified and then used against us to control us and keep us below. And then Brother Begizizwe says, these problems have been identified before. Any true leader that emerged was killed or scandalized or somehow corrupted or co-opted. And then, I'm not sure if it's a sister or Brother Yonela, they say they have been identified, but were not intentional about solving them. And then Oses Kanyisa says, no, I don't think so. And then we have another response here saying that they have been identified, but there is no willpower. That's from Sister Mutidisi. I think that was more than 5 responses.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that. I would like to just scan through these responses before I continue. I will start from the last, Sister Motidisi. She's saying the problems have been identified, but there has been no, what, willpower or real power? Did she say willpower? Willpower. Let's just say she said willpower. Now, in South Africa in the past 30 years, many people have identified the various issues that they have said, okay, because of these signs, we remain a colony, we remain colonized, we remain in an anti-Black society that places Black people in a precarious, deadly, dangerous position. Power in the form of economic power and the power of profiting from culture. Black people create culture, cultural motives. They create the culture. Black people's culture is not denied from being expressed. But what is happening is Black economic power, the cultural or the creative cultural economy of Black people does not profit Black people. That's the culture part. The academy, there are Black scholars, there are Black people in universities, there are different universities. The VCs are Black, some are women, some are old, some are young, some are technocrats, some begin as revolutionaries, and then 5 years, 10 years into the job, the toll becomes hard on them because they are working within an institution that is itself created by white power. It's structurally and systemically Eurocentric. So they will try and implement, they will source some solutions from students or from other scholars to say, okay, and they will have many seminars dealing with decolonization. Perhaps many of us here have been to a lot of decolonization seminars where we talk. And the intention, someone mentioned intention, that no, we've identified the problems, but there's been a lack of intention. Starting from the last statement again, sister, she speak about will. So in South Africa, we have almost, the word political will has become like a byword. We know that South African civil society and South African revolutionary movement and the conscious community have brought to the table, brought to the social discourse and to the social awareness several solutions, beginning with land, how and why we must get land first, and decolonize and Africanize and do this and this and that. But kube sekuba khona into esikhubazayo, kuba khona, there appears to be lack of political will. So we've made it a byword, this thing of political will. So there's lack of political will. And then we ask ourselves the question, how then do you make the political, what do you call them? Not the bourgeoisie, but the political, not society, I don't want to call them society, the political class, let me for lack of a better word. How do we make them? My children are bringing frogs to my window. I do not know how to deal with this Black rebellion here. I'm speaking to the nation and they are bringing me frogs from outside. They should be sleeping. Excuse me for that. I have to close my curtains. One second, excuse me. Yeah, the Black family. So I am saying that we are identifying problems. We are not lacking in solutions to the issues that we face. In the poem that I read, written in 1971, the poet, who I would even call the Black philosopher, he poses a question: what is white about White City Jabavu? Because everything that is identified in White City Jabavu is not only dark, there are dark forces, there are dead corpses in the gutter, there are screams from Black women, he mentions a whole lot of things which basically show us, the Black, it talks about the garments, the Black widow's garments, there's mourning. He asks the question, what is white about White City Jabavu? For me, that question itself is from Mbaba Mjali, that question is a movement towards an answer. He's actually showing you that there is everything about White City Jabavu. The blackness of White City Jabavu is a creation of whiteness. So I'm asking now almost a philosophical question. Uguti, even though we have identified solutions to our plight as Black people, communally, generally, whether it's politically or culturally, or even economically, we have great economic minds, even though they are operating within an economy which was never planned for us, operating within an economy which we are actually enabling by participating in it. Or the academy, we are enabling its existence, even though we've identified that it is anti-us. So we can identify the problems. We can identify Izingqinamba. We can identify our challenges. And we can provide proper, well thought out well-articulated solutions. We've done that in the past 30 years in South Africa, or even before that, for the past, I would say even 100 years. Baba Mfuthi, who I quote a lot, when he wrote his book, Abantu Abamnyama Lapha Bavela Khona, in 1910, and it was published in around 1920. I think nowadays they've published him as they've published the biography sometime maybe 10 years ago. I think autobiography of a Kholwa intellectual, because why he Kholwa? When he wrote that book, Abantu Abamnyama Lapha Bavela Khona, the black people from whence they come, he also in 1910 identified the same problems that afflicting black people. He identified the same problems and the same solutions that Fanon would 40 years later identify. And Biko would a few years later identify. That other black philosophers and black thinkers would later identify and either write about or present. Someone said already that all the great leaders, the best leaders, they were killed. And someone said, if they are not killed, they are co-opted. So I'm saying that they are co-opted either into the academy or they are co-opted into the economy that doesn't serve us, that basically services the debt. It puts us in a debt trap. The white neoliberal capitalist economy is basically a debt trap machine, like another Rasta man said in one of his songs, Midnight. Because the economy is a debt trap machine. You know, he says they fill up your pocket just to rob your pocket, or fill up your pocket just to pick your pocket. So these are all rhetorical, philosophical articulations of the problem we find ourselves in. And Mfuthi identified them 100 years ago. Later, I'm going towards my solution, just a conclusion now. Baba, what's his name? Not Aikwe Ama, Ghanaian, the leader of independent Ghana. I wanted to talk about independence, but it's going to take us a long time. I don't want to take a long time. Oh, which one? Magema Mfuthi. Mfuthi is Ngobo. So it's a Magema Mfuthi. Magema, Magema, F-U-Z-E. So that book is out of print, but you may find it in some maybe a used bookshop, whatever it's called, second-hand bookshops. So Kwame Nkrumah, whom I love so much. I know there's a lot of critiques about Kwame Nkrumah's method, whether he was autocratic, or whether he was, people write a whole lot of things about Kwame Nkrumah. Thank you for reminding me about Kwame Nkrumah. So Kwame Nkrumah has a book called Towards African Unity. I quoted it so many times on Facebook. I try, in fact, in the Institute of Africology, we try to live by the principles presented in that book, as well as some principles presented by other Maulana Karenga or Molefe Asante or even Big or all these elders. They are the backbone of all our institutions. Mwalimu Amos Wilson is one of my ultimate teachers. There is no lack, Black family. There is no lack of solutions. Okay, we already said that there's an issue of political will, and there's a problem of co-option, and there's a problem of murder, blatant murder by the system. And of course, a lot of the time, 90% of the time, the system uses the black hand to eliminate the black threat, the so-called black messiah. Whether the black messiah is a female messiah or a male messiah, it doesn't matter. If she or he presents a threat to the white establishment in whatever form, whether minimal or great, macro or micro, they are eliminated. It is something that's still working today. So there's lack of political will. I want to just focus on that part. Political will, academic will, and then the willingness of the people that are being called to make a revolution. Remember, our leaders, they call you into the wilderness of making a revolution. I call it the wilderness of making a revolution because it's a lonely road. It's a thankless job. Ask Baba Buntu, ask Mama Teboho, ask anyone, ask Mama Ya Ashantewa. Ask anyone anywhere in Africa or anywhere in the Black world who forms an institution that is unselfishly and unwaveringly focused and devoted to the liberation of Black people. It's a thankless occupation, if you can call it an occupation. But the motive, the modus operandi, is to call us all, not in a fundamentalist or dogmatic way to form some kind of religious following, which no, everyone come here and follow me. No, I don't think that our teachers' aim is to do that. The aim is to channel the will of the people. You remember what Amir Cabral said? Excuse me if I'm jumping away from the topic. Amir Cabral said, you cannot make people want to be free. They have to want to be free. You cannot make them. I'm trying to paraphrase in my mind. Amilcar Cabral said that you cannot, anyone who has it can just put it up maybe on the chat. Amilcar Cabral said something to the tune of you cannot make people want what they don't want. People have to want to be free. They have to have a desire to be free. But now a colonized people who have been subjected to inferiority complex in every form, in the media, in their education, in the way they are treated at work as laborers and close to slaves, the will is suppressed. The will to be free is suppressed. Umama Gogo Nina Simone says, she talks, it's a famous quotation that I will tell you what it is to be free. But I'll tell you what freedom is. No fear. So fear is used to suppress that will to act with others, to join the struggle, to unify with others who are going the same direction. And it's fear of losing your job. It's fear of losing your life, which is a real and present threat. It's fear of losing certain privileges or certain safety, something called the safety of houses. So we are moving around almost like zombies, a lot of us, not all of us, living in a state of fear, which cripples us from seeing the true price and the true measure of how much we can be free, especially in a land like Africa, which has everything, which is a paradise. Everybody knows that Africa has everything. The rest of the world, the Western world, is wealthy today because of everything they get from Africa. We don't have to repeat that. We know our story. Our story doesn't begin in slavery, it begins in glory, right? So what happened to the glory is the question that we have to ask. And how come we cannot reach back into that glorious past so that we can do a Sankofa move, whereby we fetch that which made us progressive and use it today and willfully do it so that we can actually take it to the place where we know freedom is, which is within ourselves and also which is within our land, right? Lastly, I'd like to say this. I'm sitting here with a lot of books. I've got a book called The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. In this book, it's not only a historical book, this Destruction of Black Civilization, which is a tome, which is almost like a Bible in the Institute of Africology. It has history in the beginning, but towards the end of the book, please get this book. It has programs. I just want to quote just one of them. The Shape of Things to Come, a master plan. So it has a master plan for how to organize the race. Lots of our organizations that are existing today, some of the leaders have read this book, but I'm not sure how many have even tried to instill willfully, to focus on one of these organizational imperatives, fundamentals that this elder, Chancellor Williams, was able to. It was the conclusion of his book after looking at everything that's happening in Africa and all the challenges. Published this book in 1987. I think 1987 was the last publications. He identified all the problems, like already we've mentioned. All the other elders have already identified the problems. Marimba Ani, or Mama Francis Cresswell. We read them, we recoil in anger, we recoil in shame sometimes, and we are empowered to do something tomorrow or to do something today about our challenges. But then we are stifled by the fact that there's Mutapa, there's Africology, there's eBukhosini, there is Black First Land First, there is that other movement, there is this other movement. There's a tidal wave of mysticism happening in Africa today, where a lot of our family members are becoming, initiated into spiritual systems, or ubungoma and all those kinds of healing systems. But the question still arises, your articles, the thing that you're wearing as Mngoma, who makes it? And then it emerges that it is most of these things that are made, not this one. This one is made by blacks. You find that most of these things that we are wearing, articles of our spiritual connection, are made by Johan Ruperts. They are made by Indians. They are made by Turkish people. They are made by Pakistanis, right? So the challenge I'm trying to say, I'm saying, Black family, is power. If we do not use the solutions that have been presented by our elders in a very focused way, we will end up again with another 100 years of identifying the problem and not being able to decolonize properly. Now, I would like to say, maybe this might be controversial, the decolonization program has been stolen, has been captured. Every time you hear the word, even though decolonization is a noble idea, it's a noble goal, it has become like what Rastas say in Jamaica when they talk about, back to Africa, Africa is a must. And you find that only 2% are able to move, to take the step of moving to Africa. Not just Rastas, just generally people in the diaspora. So there are many challenges, of course, that stand in a lot of people's way of moving back to Africa. But I'm saying that the Back to Africa movement is a 150-year-old project. The decolonization project is almost like a 50-year project from the time of independence in Ghana and other states, other nations, provinces of Africa, provinces of Al-Kebula and Kemet. All these things have been happening in stages, but these stages have been broken up and the progress has been stalled by either the death of the leaders or us being infiltrated by agents of imperialism and colonialism, and or our lack of the willpower to take all this power we've been given to its fullest conclusion. So I suggest that as the Black family, I don't suggest that we stop identifying troubleshooting. I don't say we must stop troubleshooting and looking for problems. I'm not saying we must stop looking for problems and what is standing on our way. We must not stop identifying. But I think that we should have military or militaristic type of strategy in the way we approach Black progress and Black liberation and the liberation of the Black family. Philosophy we've had philosophies from the time of the great Nesut Bitis, the ancient pharaohs in Sudan. They've written their solutions and their way of Ma'at, their way of Unu, their way of Batu, their way of Ubuntu. They've written it on the walls and on papyri for the past 7,000 years or more. So we have a philosophical foundation, historical foundation, and historical examples of our own greatness. We know that the first universities were in Africa. We know that spiritual principles and spiritual institutions that have now transformed into other things that are now working against us, we know that they were founded in Africa before it was even called Africa. So we know all this, but with all this knowing, we now are faced with the challenge of channeling the will of the people, us, the melanated people, channeling that will into strategies in our own homes, in our own families. I must say, I must comment this. Some of us, not all of us, and this is not to look down on anyone. Some of us are winning the struggle to take our families, to make our families not just think the way we do because we want to puppet our children or make our partners follow unquestioningly or uncritically the way we think. No, we are not doing that. But what I am saying is there is hope. There is an abundant amount of unity happening within the Black world. Right, yeah, I've got 3 minutes. So we have abundant resources. The only way to channel our resources, we have to think militaristically about this first, look at it this way, I will use the Zulu formation as I close. In the Zulu Impi formation, you have something called Amaviyo. We have the horn, the famous horn formation of how to attack a problem or how to attack the enemy. But then Amaviyo, you get certain age group moving in the front and a certain age group moving in the middle pillar. And then you have another age group and another people with different capacities, different strengths moving in the last pillar. And you have another part of the war strategy. I'm saying that we have to have an art of war, which is the native indigenously configured and an indigenously focused type of art of war. Because we are in a war, we've accepted that we are in a war. We have accepted that we've got the resources. We've accepted that we've got all the books and all the elders and all the leaders and all the youth and all the energy that we need to actually win the struggle for our liberation in our lifetime, not in the next lifetime, not just in our children's lifetime, but we have it within us to channel our resources towards Black unity. Now, people have spoken about Black unity as unprincipled Black unity, where people are just united just to unite, or because, we just have to unite because we have to do this. No. The principles are already there in the foundations of our philosophies. In Ma'at, we call it ubulungiswa, or justice. Those are the principles. Every single nation within the Black family understand what justice is. We understand what freedom means. We understand what it means to us to be economically free. We understand group economics, Nguzo Saba and all those things. We attend these events. We have hope. We have already begun making the solution. I am saying, my words today, my message today is a hekau, is the words of power to say that let us take what we already have and do not give up. Let's not succumb to the forces that are around us that are showing us we are defeated, we are this, we are that, we are that. We are actually more. There are actually more of us arising towards freedom than those who are backtrackers who are moving backward. With one phrase here. It's not a long poem. It's not even a poem. It's a phrase from a book that was given to me by Mama Ashantewa. It's called Instructions for Right Living. Sebayit Ankma. Just one solo, just one line. 36 great goods. It says here, what is a more honorable mission to have than a mission in life that ends our suffering, helps our wounded to heal themselves, the hungry to feed themselves, the naked to clothe themselves, the homeless to house themselves, brings swift justice to the innocent, confronts our sorrow-stricken, empowers our powerless, rebuilds our shattered lives, and defends our children. So books like this have the solutions. It is saying begin with a mission within your family and within yourself. Wazi ukuthi this mission will be fulfilled in your lifetime.
Thank you very much, Mkhulu, for that insightful presentation. Now we are going to open a round of questions or comments to Mkhulu's presentation. I think one thing that stands out for me is the fact that solutions are here. They have been philosophized about, spoken about, written about, and now you know, they need to be at an implementation stage, you know. I am noting Sister Motsidisi's hand. I will note 2 more hands, and then we'll take 3 questions. And then after that, I will go to the next round of questions if there are any more questions. Motsidisi, sorry, you can go first, and then there are two questions here in the chat, but Mkhulu, I'm going to ask our sister to go to say her questions, and then I'm going to read out the questions here in the comment and then in the chat, and then you can answer those, and then we'll see after that if there are any more questions. Sister Motsidisi, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Lina ke Motsidisi, as my brother has mentioned. I don't know, my contribution is twofold, right? Part of it is commentary, and the other part is a question. So regarding the issue of family in the African context, we know that the family is the most basic unit within any society, right? But families aren't made up of homogeneous beings. You know, they are not made up of people that look alike, act the same way, or think the same way. You know, humans are intricately woven beings. We are so complex in how we operate within ourselves before we even attach ourselves to other people with the effort of forming families. So in terms of the self, right? The self, before the self attaches itself to any other person to say, okay, now we are starting a family. I don't think we pay enough attention to the individual. We don't groom ourselves to a point where we come as whole beings to any union. And I think that is part of the problem. So as a solution to that, I think anybody intending to build any kind of family should strive to groom themselves holistically, so that by the time they decide that, okay, I want to unite with somebody else so we can form a family, you don't have two beings that are bruised and battered within themselves, but you've got two people that are holistically going to go into any union so that marriages can be, you know, sustained. And I guess my question then is, where do we begin, you know, to, because as you've said, Mkhulu, we've been at it for a while. Books have been written, philosophers have written, people have spoken. There is no institution that does not have any form of counseling, you know, for couples and anybody really wanting to start a family. And it's like in the midst of all of that, the degeneracy continues. You know, instead of us winning this battle of child-headed households, single parenting, and the defeat of the African family structure, instead of us winning that battle, there is more and more disintegration. So then what are we to do at this point? Because I'm more interested in the solutions and what can practically be done. Now that we see the decay and how far we've come, or how far we have not been able to go with this family thing, what can we begin to do? Because I did say there is a lack of willpower, right? But that also comes with the evolution of the self. The self needs to be evolved to a certain degree to be able to take up the spear and say, I'm going to battle and I'm going to fight for my own soul so that I can build this kind of family unit. So where we are now, with everything that is happening, where do we begin? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Empress.
Mkhulu,
should I proceed?
Yeah, okay, you
respond?
can proceed.
I'd like to respond.
post-
I'd like to respond to what she's saying because it is very important. It's crucial. It's in fact the center. It is the central part of why we have gathered here. And unfortunately, our elders were not able to make it now with the presentation that I was very much looking forward to about the Black family. But of course, it is a testament to say that we are not lacking elders to teach us. And it is not like the elders have not taught us. For us, our birth began when we became conscious. When we became conscious, there's something wrong in the world that we are living in. I am working, like, for example, let me give you a personal example before I answer my sister's question, because she articulated it properly. Personally, I studied marketing management at the University of, at DUT, Durban University of Technology, when it was still called Technical Natal. And then it was called Steve Biko later. But there are no Bigoisms in there. But there's no Bigo in its philosophy. But when I was studying marketing and I was working as an intern, Coca-Cola, or MTN, doing things, selling products basically that are not made by us, that are not for us. I was working at Coca-Cola and I asked myself the question, okay, I have a marketing career. I am selling products. I am in advertising. I am doing PR campaigns. I'm exerting my creativity in my mind. At the same time, I'm a poet on the side. I was a poet for a long time, since like age 16 or whatever. So I had to ask myself crucial questions, and the things that, what helped me to answer the questions that I was having about the Black world and the condition that we are living in was coming across books or information by people like Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Remember, I'm growing up in a township where there is no Black consciousness movement. That must be very clear. There was PAC here and there. You could hear, oh, PAC is doing a rally here and there, but hardly any social impact. Not to distract, not to speak badly about the revolutionary movement, you know, but movements that were Pan-Africanists. The point I'm making, Pan-Africanist and Black liberation focused movements were a bit far away from me. So when I was asking myself these questions when I'm in my early 20s in marketing and doing all these things, I could not find any solutions outside of myself, but I could only find solutions within myself. And I say within myself, but at the same time, honoring the elders like Omazisi Gunene, who I would come across, elders like Opitiga Ntuli as an artist who was very pro-African and pro-Black in many ways, not always. But so, long story short, I'm saying that the drive, that will to be free, that lugu, that drive to want something more out of one's life is the beginning. So each one has to desire to be free. I'm repeating again maybe what Baba Ukabral said. Our family, sister mentioned that the family, the Black family is not homogeneous. It is made up of individuals. Even when you have your own children are individuals that have individual needs. Yes, there is a family focus, which is funde, to be healthy. We have to be healthy, we have to study, we have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. We have to tick these boxes, but at the same time, we have to respect the fact that each individual will be who they want to be. That's freedom. The first lesson, my answer to this now, my answer is that the first lesson of freedom must begin, of what freedom means, must begin in the family. And again, it repeats what I said. If things are done in the spirit of fear in the family, if umuntu mayenza wrong, they have to be scared or threatened to do right, already you are teaching wrong lessons about freedom to your family. So there's certain things like corporal punishment, which some people think, oh, it's an African thing. Our elders did it, so they did it like this. A whole lot of abuses were done by our elders, thinking that it is the culture, yet it was not the culture. So my direct answer, remove the fear factor from the nurturing space called the family. The moment you remove the fear factor and you replace it with devoted love. Like this dude who's coming here to show me some love. Umvulandlela. Umvulandlela says sawubona. Ninjani. Yes, that's it. I'll talk to you right now. Ngiyabuya manje. Hamba ngizobuya manje. Ngizokhuluma nawe manje. Hayibo, umvikeli wenzeni? Yeah, you see, someone is hitting someone on the eye and it's wrong. But ngizokhuluma nani manje bafana. So the point I'm making is remove the fear factor from the family unit. That's the beginning of decolonizing the mind within the family. Before you try to decolonize the mind in your movement, in your political space, or at your workspace, begin ekhaya by understanding that each and every individual is unique. They have different ways of expressing themselves. And if they have different ways of expressing themselves, we need to have a compassionate approach and an African Ubuntu-based approach. Remember, Ubuntu is not just a philosophy, it is a way of doing things. It is a way of being. If we have Ubuntu within the family, you will have Ubuntu, you will create individuals, not create, but you will be nurturing individuals that have the spirit of Ubuntu within them. Just like the one that I'm gonna have to go and discipline with love, who hit his brother on the eye. For now, my sister. The next question, please.
Give thanks, Mkhulu, for that response. Before I just read the questions and the and the comments on the chat, I want to just apologize to the entire family that we have been trying to get Baba Mwalimu on the line, but unfortunately we are not winning. It seems he had planned to have his class. He has his class going on right now, and he had planned to have them also participate in this masterclass, and there are technical difficulties in having him as well as the class join. So what the Black Education Masterclass team will do is maybe speak to him about him recording himself doing the presentation and maybe send it to us, and then we can maybe make it available to all of the participants of the Black Education Masterclass. So apologies, family, for that. The questions in...
Excuse me, my king. Excuse me, my lord.
Yes.
Excuse me. Can I just say something about one of the questions that sister just asked? I feel like I have to, because she might not get a chance to hear this again. Can I just attend to that one question?
Yeah, okay. Can I just read these ones on the chat, and then you can
continue. Not a problem.
Tackle them all at once.
Not a problem. Go ahead.
So the one says, what was Africa called before? And then the other question is, where can we get instructions for Right Living book? And then there's a comment from Gogu Noktula Ati. The militarization of our strategy should necessarily bring in spirituality. We thank you, Mkhulu, for the words of wisdom and encouragement. Yeah, I think those were on the, and then there's a response helping you with Al-Capulon, someone saying Africa was called Al-Capulon before, but you can just respond to all of those as well as what you wanted to capture as well. Mkhulu, you have muted yourself, we can't hear you.
Okay, excuse me. Let me start with the easy one, the one about Al-Capulon. Al-Capulon, the etymology of Al-Capulon goes back to a place the people called it's Moorish in its origin. When I say Moorish, it is established. Let me put it this way. The etymology of Al-Capulon, it is not exactly Bantu African, but it is a Northern African, a Northern Africa that had been already, when that name was posited, it was already influenced by Arabic, by the influence of Arabic. Before, even what we call Islam now entered or re-entered in other schools of thought, re-entered Africa as a religion coming from Arabia. The word, I mean, if you look at even looking at the word, you cannot find a nation today that calls Africa Al-Kebulan. So if you cannot find the etymology of Al-Kebulan in any language in Africa today, but I stand to be corrected, it's a revolutionary name to use, just like how Azania was decolonized by the rebels in East Africa in order to make it a revolutionary name, Azania, you know, the land, the land that God has had. Now Azania appears in the Bible. The word Azania appears in the Bible, you know, as a name of a child. So it is not an African name, it is a Shemite name or a Semitic name, so to speak, right? The Azania. But Gondwana is also another name, which is like I would call it a scientific name, like Pangea, Gondwana, and all these other anthropological names that have roots in old languages, Roman languages. My answer, or let me say from the level of Africology, we believe that Africa redefined is a better. By Africa redefined, we basically mean that it is up to Africans today to define Africa according to how they want to define it. Some people say Kemet because it means black land, and one of our oldest languages, the Moderator. But some people say Al-Kebulan because certain revolutionary class picked up that name and adopted it from the Berber and from Carthage, for the Carthaginians. But there's a word that I was looking for. I forgot the exact name of these people and their language that they speak, but it's North Africa, but a North Africa that had already been infiltrated by the Arabic language. I hope that makes sense. So the answer is that Africa was never called Africa, the whole continent. The development of the terming of Africa, I mean, some people have called it Ethiopia, but then you find that Ethiopia was defined as a particular land from a certain part, the eastern Eritrean Sea, what they call the Eritrean Sea, the eastern parts of the sea from below Egypt, below Aswan, or below the last cataract, which is around Aswan, northern Sudan, all the way down. That was called Ethiopia, right? But then some people may say Mapungubwe is a fitting name, you know, but Mapungubwe is the name of a particular part of Africa in itself. So the point I'm making is Africa there was not a people, there was not a United Nations of Africa. So therefore, we cannot speak about a definition of Africa, which is a singular definition. I hope I'm clear there.
Yeah, you are clear, Mkhulu.
Excuse me?
I'm saying you are clear.
Okay.
At least I understood. I'm not sure if the person that asked the question understood your response.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. I understood. I think it's more clearer that it was not this united one lump of a place, but it was different names for different
clans,
people.
different nations, you know.
Yes,
so
it's just that unfairness, or somebody just came and claimed as if it's just children of one house, which was not.
Exactly, Mama. So it's up to us now. It's up to us if we are united now. But you see, the thing is of unity, I know it's a tricky proposition, African unity. African unity can happen. We call it Africa now because it has been called Africa. Yes, there are ways to defend the etymology of Africa as it is called now. Some of us, we spell Africa with a K. So we spell it with a K. Some people may not know why, but we in Africology, we spell it with even the definition of Africology itself, which our elder scholars call it Africology with a C. Now you know there's a dermatology or some cosmetics company owned by a white woman, which is called Africology, right? But Africology with a K, even before that business was established, Africology change its C to a K to in order to harmonize with the word ka, the soul, the old ancient Egyptian and Cushitic word ka, which basically means soul. But also it not only means soul, it means something from, someone from somewhere. Umenzi kakutu, usbambani kabani, umka bai. You know, so the ka itself is it's almost like a source code. It's a code that defines source. What is your source? When there is no Menzi without Kudu. Kudu is my father's name, so I am called Menzi Kakudu Maseko. You know, but some people also in the Nguni language define themselves according to their mother's name. Because now mina ngumtaka ngumtaka Zanel, mtaka. So that ka with the ka, that's why we use the word ka in the Africa redefined. But we're not married to the word Africa. If as individuals there is a growing surge of Kemetic studies in all over the globe today, and most of those people basically say Africa must be called either Taneter, means the land of the gods, the land of the divine ones. You know, it's a possible name that we can use, but we cannot use it. It does not matter having a name that is, we can agree about it on social media. We can agree about it in our different silos, but if we cannot form power around the name, remember the breakup of the European Union, it was a question of power. In whose block does power lie in? Because you can say, we choose the word, let's just say Gwamtania, like Amazulu. We are so happy it's called Gwamtania, you know. But then what about the Botswana people? What about other Bapedi people? What about the Namibian people? All these people also would like the name to be in their language. So my position is that Africa can continue to be called Africa, but if we unite within a power block, a power block means economic, cultural, and spiritual, or how can I say, ideological type of unity, then we can come up with a name that we like. If we want to say Tanehisi, which is an old name, you know, or the land of, the dark stands for land. Nehisi means the dark people, land of the dark people. Do we want to be defined by color? Or do we want to be, Kemet means land of the blacks also, or black land. Do we still want to be defined by color? Is our color, as Teboho said, is our color the thing that unites us against the enemies of our race? Or is it something else that unites us? Then we can come up with that name that defines what is the source of our unity. I hope I'm making myself clear. Thank you.
No, give thanks, Mkhulu, that was clear. There was also a question about where to get the book you were quoting from, the Right Living, the instructions for Right Living book. But before you just answer that question, there's also a hand up from Sister Nokwanda. Sister Nokwanda, maybe you can just share your question. And can I just say that this will be the last round of questions, and then we will close tonight's program with the response to Sister Nokwanda's question, as I see no more hands or any more comments or chats on the chat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Makosi, Makosi. I hope you can all hear me. I do see that. Khulumenzi, it's always a pleasure. Sawubona, Thokoza, Makosi, all protocols observed. You were found at the right time. Like, look at you getting the whole session all to yourself.
Then my other one, my young one, he keeps wanting to be here, but
even me, I have somebody. Close the door, baby. Let me just ask this question.
They don't want to contribute. They want to, but please go on.
It's the energy. So, I'm glad that we have the time to ask this particular question, and I love that in the outro of what you were speaking about, you speak about militancy. You know, there's a large movement that I am picking up or feeling rather, of people wanting to revolt, you know, rightfully so. And I'm one of those who recently, and I say recently because life has put me in the way that it's put me in, who sees our evolution to be different, because I understand that our forefathers were the healers or are the healers. And so when we speak about revolution, I'm afraid, and you spoke about this fear, right? But my fear is not in us imposing violence. My fear is in us losing ourselves in that. Because when we understand the power of reincarnation, and we understand Uguti, what you put out also comes back into you, you know, in terms of that karmic cycle, to justice ourselves. Is violence the right thing? Is violence the best way? And yes, I understand violence as a strategy. I'm a very confrontational person. I stand about 1'7", you know, so I'm not a very small woman. And I know how to use I know how to use my body and my words and my mouth, and rightfully so, you know, when you find yourself in a situation where you have to defend yourself. So I'm asking, in our strategy, do we have to impose violence to get the message across, in terms of innocent lives being lost, to get to the end result? And I think it's a question that I've been wanting to ask in the series, when Mwalimu Usompisi last week, or it might have been the week before, was speaking. It arose, and it's something that is just something that's constantly, you know, ticking at me. Do we have to be violent? Yes, we can be strategic, and yes, we can impose violence where we need to, but it seems like we're hungry for blood. And I'm afraid of that, because we will lose ourselves, our Blackness, our healing abilities, our innocence and our purity, in terms of even the children that we birth. They are stunning, they're incredible, they have all of the potential in the world, because we have not done as we get done to, you know. So this is also a personal question, but I look forward to hearing your response.
Chair, should I answer, or should we take the hand that is raised? Chairperson Slalo, Honorable. Okay,
no, apologies. No, you can respond to the question, and then also just the question about where to get the book, and then maybe just conclude with the importance of language, as was asked, and then that will be the final contribution.
Okay, thank you so much. So this book, Umama Shantiwa got this book for me. I think she had traveled to Ghana, and it's signed by the author, and the author's name is Nefer Seshem Ra. So to Brother Maseko, your own copy from Shantiwa. So okay, so there's a collective, it's an online collective called the Ma'at Collective, right? The Ma'at Collective published this book. It's not very expensively published. By that, I mean the quality. What is quality here is the words, right? So it's what is actually written in it. So it was published in 2007 by the Ma'at Collective. So they were an online group. A number. I'll just give the number. So if the number still works, obviously you can obtain the book from them, and an email. So let me just. So the contact the University of Kemet, KMT, capital KMT, the University of Kemet Press at 313-823-6769.
Mkhulu.
Yes.
So, sorry to disturb. I think it would be more beneficial if you wrote it on the chat, and then everybody else will also
I've got 12
get the
fingers, but I've
information.
only got 2 hands. I've got 12 fingers, but I've only got 2 hands. So when my hands are filled with, one is holding the book, one is holding Mr. Maseko here.
Okay.
So Kilimanjaro, people, if you can follow it, I mean, you know how to spell Kilimanjaro. Kilimanjaro @yahoo.com. I will write it later when we close, okay? Kilimanjaro a small I, Kilimanjaro. So Kilimanjaro @yahoo.com. So that's how you can obtain the book. It was published. For me, it was a gift. I didn't buy it. Most of my books, really, I hardly buy. People give me books because well, I do buy books, but you know what I mean. Yeah, Kilimanjaro, yeah, that's how it's spelled. Yeah, @yahoo.com. That's it. Thank you, Nogwanda. So Nogwanda, we always caution against unnecessary violence because a lot of the time violence breeds violence. Violence has something called karmic qualities, karmic spiritual qualities, whereby it comes back to the sender, right? The violence comes back. It comes back to umthakathi. Abathakathi, they are usually, most of the time, they're not rich or they're not wealthy. And even if they are extremely unhappy because the wickedness that they willed out to the world, it returns to them. So the violence, let me just speak directly about what I was speaking about. What I was talking about is not militaristic, just violence, just to say revenge violence against whiteness, so to speak. There is different levels of violence whereby we can wield epistemological and ontological violence. By that, I mean violence by way of self-defense against notions that seek to continue to belittle us. So, but the strategy I was speaking about, I even made allusions of the military strategy of Tsikoane and Nkosi Ushaka. I'm speaking from what I know. I know there's many, the Xhosas wielded the wars. I don't know how they did it, but I know from Amazon, because I'm from KwaZulu, how it was done, the horn formation and how it was done, and how I was speaking about the art of war. Now, it's called the art of war, not just quoting the Eastern book about the art of war. It's called the art of war because I'm speaking about the African indigenous art of war. It's based first on discipline. Militancy is about self-discipline and adherence to authority, righteous authority. The authority has to be righteous. You're not fighting an unjust war. You are preparing yourself to be militant within a war that is guided by people who have just outcomes in mind. So, there is a part of that which is self-defense, like what you've seen with the elders in the Black Panther movement and other freedom riders and all different, and Poko, I would speak of Poko from the Southern Hemisphere, you know, people who had, and even violence that was used by people like Pambata Gamanzinza, who was fighting against the poll tax. So those people, but you must remember also with all those different kind of examples that I've just made, there was blowback. The enemy slaughtered a lot of women, a lot of children, and they bombed a lot of people, and they maimed a lot of people when they were retaliating back. So you cannot have a revolutionary violence without revolutionary theory or revolutionary ideology being adopted willfully by the masses of the people that you are leading towards that militaristic strategy. Anything short of that, we have to look to Baba Sankara, Thomas Sankara, who said that a soldier without revolutionary training is a criminal. It's like giving criminals guns to go, and you say, no, go and shoot the enemy. But the criminal will turn on himself, will turn on his family, just like our police are doing. Just like South Africa is it's a terrain of terrible violence because the guns and the military power, the power of arms, is in the hands of people who are conceptually, spiritually, politically untrained to hold that power. So that's all I would like to say there. So yes, there is a danger of us injuring ourselves if we say that we're just gonna willy-nilly just say we're gonna fight a racial war. Is it a racial war that we need to fight, or is it a war that includes the racial aspect of it? What is the main part of the war? For me, Menzi Maseko, it's a metaphysical war. The metaphysical war means that spiritually, we need to Africanize, not just decolonize. Spiritually, we need to Africanize. Family-wise, we have to Africanize. We have to understand what is family from the African perspective. There is a war in itself. By organizing a family in an African way, you are actually wielding a war against a system that seeks to divide you as a family. It is actually a war strategy to train your children to be spiritually mature, to train your children to do certain things, to train your family and your family members to think in a certain way. So the military is a metaphor for very well focused, very well disciplined, ideologically sound strategy. And the last one was about language, my brother, right? The last one was about language. What was it about language as we close?
The importance of language.
Well, language is, I would say, comes in 2 or 3-fold forms. There is ulimi lwebele, which is what is called mother tongue. That everyone's mother tongue must be respected, must be defended, must be conserved, must be preserved, must be used, and must be empowered. And I think the South African Constitution, with all its flaws, has a lot of clauses within there that seek to defend to defend each and every language that exists within our country. But the language can be defended, it can be a policy, it can be there in the policy to say, no, the languages, it must be protected and all that. But it is up to the language users to empower the language by simply using it and using it everywhere, using it in creative ways, finding creative outlets for the use of that language, because language is magic. Language is a carrier of culture. Language is a currency, even, you know. I'm talking about just your mother tongue alone. One of my primary teachers is Baba Buntu. Mwalimu Buntu used language as what could I call it? Not a weapon, but he used it as a method. You know, I don't know if people know this. Mwalimu Buntu, even though he wrote Lisizu most of the time, he is one of the most translated writers in the United Nations, whatever, UNHR, I forgot what the platform is, but he is recognized as one of, he's a poet laureate, by the way, from KwaZulu-Natal, Mwalimu Buntu. He wrote the Anthem of the Decades and many ancestors in the Sacred Mountain, but he wrote them all in Zulu, but they were translated into English. So he won the war. He won the language war by him and Guki and many and others, but there are very few. So I'm saying that language is empowered by its users and is empowered by the ones who use it wisely. Lastly, now language in general. Now to say English, because we're coming from different clans and different, we are different so-called nations. Even the word nation itself is problematic somehow, but this is the semantics. Language is a tool that can be used to oppress one and can also be used to free one. I am very careful how I use language in my house. Again, I try to not use language of fear. I try to not use the language of sorrow, like the word sorry. I try to get my children not to say sorry. You know, they rather say uxolo, because uxolo has a word of peace in it. Can you be appeased if I do something to you and I want to, I'm feeling sorry? I mustn't say sorry, because the word sorry itself carries a lot of negative connotations. But mangithi ngiyaxolisa, noma ngithi uxolo, noma mangithi phephisa. You know, phephisa is, in my language, it means not just be careful, but I will be careful next time. It's basically saying, it's a promise to say that uzophepha from harm coming from me. See, there's magic in our language. But you can use the very same concepts of peaceful, compassionate, and spiritually grounded language, even in English or French or Afrikaans, whatever language that you are using, that we are using as a lingua franca. So language is part of the keys to opening And lastly, language also, inyom sam. This is the important part. I would be amiss if I talk about all these things without addressing the issue of umsamu. Umsamu is your family altar, your head, the place where you go to pray. Or in Zulu, we don't pray, we say siyathemeleza, which means basically you are speaking freely. Ukthemeleza is to speak openly without trying to consciously find the right words exactly. But what you are saying is, yes, uthemeleza from whatever is in your heart and whatever is bothering you, whatever is actually standing in your way, is challenging you. So you go and temeleza upahle to your ancestors and to the living ancestors. By the way, you don't only pray, you don't only pasha to the dead ancestors or the ones who have transitioned, you also pasha to the present and also to the future. In that space in your home, Black person, understand that language is very crucial. You plant seeds using language in your family altar. You must be able to plant seeds very consciously that are not about being needy, because people are always needy sometimes in their altars and their prayer rooms. Yes, we have needs, but try very much to use language that is almost like dream language. By dream language, I mean like it's a language which is free from the control of your ego. We are temeleza. You have to use a language that opens doors for you and a language that creates situations for you that and your family that are empowering.
Magwande. No, Siyabonga Mkhulu, thank you very much for your presentation, for your insights, your contributions, your responses to the questions. We have come, family, to the end of today's presentation or today's session. We'd like to again reiterate our apologies. I don't want to say sorry because of what I just learned, but just to apologize for the inconvenience of today's only having one presentation, which was a great presentation in and of itself. And we hope to see everybody again next week, Thursday, with our two Mwalimus. So thank you, family, and thank you to everyone who participated today. We have come to the end of our session today. Thank you.
Siyabonga.